What if paying off your debt was actually costing you money? Now, there's two types of debt in the world. There's debt that pays you income, and there's debt that consumes your income. And most people treat those two types of debt the exact same. And that one mistake could be costing you millions of dollars to your wealth plan. I'm Kyle, and I help people build financial systems and models around the world of banking, tough money, and generational wealth. And in this video, I want to cover a very important topic, which is your debt strategy and how to be insanely intentional about this. Now, when it comes to wealth building, there are a lot of key components to wealth building, and debt is an interesting one. And if your plan is to become wealthier, then intentionality is the name of the game. Now, debt is so interesting because it plays two roles. It is part of your wealth foundation. Are you going to carry any type of consumer debt? And the more consumer debt that you eliminate, I would say the more protection you have on the foundational side of things. But debt can also be an amazing acceleration tool in your wealth plan. Now, there's kind of two camps here. There's like the Dave Ramsey camp, which is like no debt ever. It doesn't matter what it is. Pay off all debt, never participate in it. And then you have like the Robert Kiyosaki camp, which is like leverage is how you get the freedom. And as long as you're doing it properly, you should be okay. And this is where you have to come up with your own path and really your own criteria and frameworks around debt and what you'll use. Neither one of those are right or wrong, but do they support how you want to live and the risks you're comfortable with? Now, let's jump into this and cover part of the American debt problem. I think the perspective here is so important. The green line down there at the bottom is the personal savings rate, and you can see that's never really gotten above 5%. If it did, it was very brief, but as an American public, we just do not have tough enough savings habits. And the red line above is the consumer loans, credit cards, and other revolving plans. And what you'll notice in the last 6 years or so is this gap of Americans carrying more consumer debt versus their savings rate has really widened recently. And this is a huge problem and going to be causing a lot of financial pressure to a lot of Americans. And not understanding your debt to income ratio and how this affects your wealth plan can be costing you millions of dollars. Now, if you've not been through this Tough Money workbook, reach out to me, request a copy. I'll get one in your hands, but this workbook is designed to get you closer to your money. One of the chapters in here is all on debt. And this page comes from our Tough Money workbook. And I think the first time people ever really think about their debt to income ratio is when they're buying a home for the first time. And so you might have been in school or working or renting for the first 10 years, 20 to 30, whatever that looks like for you. Maybe the first time you're buying a home is in your 30s, and this might be the first time you're ever even talking about debt to income ratio. And what I've experienced teaching this to thousands of people across the country is a lot of times we just kind of, once we start looking at this and getting intentional about it, we realize we made so many previous decisions that put us in a really uncomfortable debt to income ratio situation. So in order to not go down that path and eliminate unnecessary financial pain, we need to understand a few things. So if you're making $150,000 per year, divide that by 12, that's your monthly income. Now, when you go and calculate what things are you paying for that have debt attached to it? A mortgage. Maybe your mortgage is $2,800. Automobile loan. Maybe you have $1,000 of recurring payments on a credit card, $400 a month in student loans, and some miscellaneous debt on there as well. So if we add all those up, $5,000 per month. We are not only paying principal on all these things, but also some interest and debt on it as well. And if we take the $5,000 of payments, divide it by the $12,500 of income, what this is telling us is our DTI, our debt to income ratio, is 40%. And anything, I think, over 30 starts to make me a little nervous. Anything past 40, we're getting into a danger zone where debt is eating up too much of your wealth potential and not allowing you to save enough money so that you can go out and invest and fund your ideal life. And so it's very important to plot this because I think it does something to you mentally. You get to see like, ooh, this is kind of getting dangerous. We need to address this. Now, a great rule of thumb when trying to decide like, okay, if I think I'm carrying too much debt, I should probably eliminate this. So there's a really easy exercise when it comes to like savings and debt. Whatever you think you should be saving, save a little bit more. So if you're like, I think I should save 20% of my income, save 23, save 25. That'll always benefit you. When it comes to debt, especially consumer debt, if you're like, I think I should carry 30% debt to income ratio, not 40, If you're thinking 30, go 28. This will always serve you well. It's a very tough money habit to develop. And so if we want to find out, well, what do my monthly payments need to be? What do I need to eliminate to get to a 20% DTI? You take 28, times it by your monthly income, $12,500, and it'll give you a payment. In this case, we got to get rid of $1,500 worth of debt that we're currently paying every month, and this would put us back into a much healthier debt to income ratio. Now, one of the ways to be intentional about this in the future is to have a criteria for how you're going to make large purchases. So like I said, if the first time you bought your home was the first time you ever talked about debt to income ratio, likely you made some decisions prior that might have put you in too high of a debt to income ratio situation. So when it comes to like buying a home, a good rule of thumb, and I'm not going to say this is perfect, this is just a framework and a model. You can apply this logic however you want in your life. Just make sure it supports how you want to live and where you want to go financially. So if we're going to go buy a home, the recommendation would be your income should equal less than 30% of that home price. So if I want to buy a $500,000 home, income needs to be around $150,000. Now, if I want to go buy a $1 million home, maybe we're getting closer to that dream home that we've always wanted. I better be making at least $300,000 a year so that my debt to income ratio naturally stays in a healthier environment. Now, if you're wanting to build your dream home in the next 5 years, 10 years, or whatever that is, and that dream home is going to cost you $5 million, I would plan on having an income well over $1 million to support that. This is just going to keep you really tough financially. Now, on the vehicle side, we have tested this with so many individuals and asked this question, like, hey, how much income are you making and what kind of vehicle do you drive? And we have a lot of our own personal data for this at this point. And what's interesting is one of the things that I think keeps a lot of people tough with their DTI is their income needs to be like 3 to 5 times their vehicle price. So if you're going to buy a $50,000 vehicle, I would be in that $90,000 to $150,000 range, right? Somewhere in there. $30,000 vehicle, $90,000, $50,000 vehicle, $150,000 minimum. Now, what's interesting is I was teaching a class and I had a 10-year-old kid that was there. It's a child of one of our clients. And this young guy he wants a Corvette in the future. And he's like, the Corvette costs, $120,000. So I need to be making at least $300,000, $360,000 per year to get that vehicle. And I'm like, man, isn't that cool that this little guy has a framework for what he wants in the future, something really nice, but instead of getting into so much debt and ruining his wealth plan, he already kind of knows where he needs to be income-wise to reward himself with that vehicle. And once again, I'm not going to say this is perfect, but you can use this model as, you might be on the 5 times versus the 3 times income. You get to make that decision, but this will be a helpful framework for you. Now, when it comes to the intentional debt strategy, let's talk about this consumer debt, the debt that consumes income, common debt. Now, here is our debt pay down criteria. And one of the things that I think is really important with this is not all debt is created equal. So sometimes people are like, hey, I'm saving money. Should I use my savings to pay down debt? Should I use it to, invest? Like what do we do with this? And I would say if you have debt interest, that's like 1 to 3%. Let's call that some primary mortgages. If you were buying homes back in like 2020 during COVID, interest rates were so low. A lot of people have debt that it's like between 1 to 3%. If you have any type of debt that's low, me personally, I'm not worried about that. That's really low interest debt. Very efficient. I'm going to go out and find other opportunities. And so I would take 100% of my savings and just keep it liquid. I wouldn't use any of my savings to pay down not even 1 penny of principal on debt in that range. Now, if I'm going to talk about like student loans and automobile loans, maybe this is like 5, 6, 7, 8% range. Well, then maybe I'm willing to take a portion of my savings. If I'm saving, $10,000 a year, I might take 25% of it or 50% of it, and I'm going to use that to start paying down extra principal on these things just to wipe out that interest payment in the future. And so you can kind of decide how and what and why you'd want this. Now, if you got like credit cards, 10, 20, 30% range, anything above that 10% range, this is the stuff I would go and attack immediately. And you got to think about it this way. If you are not finding investments that guarantee you a 10, 20, 30% return, paying down high interest debt is one of the most effective things you can do for your wealth plan. Imagine getting a guaranteed 15, 18, 22% return, and all you have to do is just pay off a credit card. You see, that has the same cash flow effect in your world than going out and making an investment. The best part is you control that. So let's take a minute real quick, and I want to pull up a couple of calculators to kind of like prove this point to you. And this is really important because I want to pull up what's called a maximum potential calculator from Truth Concepts. And I want to make sure that we're getting this point down of like, the way you pay down debt will have a massive impact on your wealth plan over time. So let's take a look at this. We're going to look at this 35-year-old making $150,000 a year, paying some money in taxes. 20% of his income goes to taxes, 40% goes to debt, 30% of it goes to lifestyle, and he's saving 10%, which is twice the national average. Now, if we look at this over a one-year snapshot, the green is what they're keeping. The pink and the reds are everything that's being transferred away. Now, one of the things that we want to do, obviously, is we want to say, if we keep compounding this over time, let's go out 35 years. Now we get to see it like over a working career. And you can see we've had $5,250,000 of income flow through our life, but what did we actually keep of it? $525,000 is what we kept. Part of that is because we're probably overspending in our lifestyle, and we're probably carrying too much debt, which isn't allowing us to save enough money. The other thing to consider is, where is this savings sitting? The reason I'm a big advocate and I love whole life insurance as my primary savings environment, because you're going to get a net return that you just will not find anywhere else. And most importantly, you get it with guarantees, liquidity, privacy, a lot of additional benefits you're never going to find with any other foundational asset. So just by getting your savings in the right environment, we can go from keeping $500,000 to over $1 million. Huge difference just by storing our savings in the right environment. Now, let's get more intentional, because if you notice up here, no debt strategy is the title of this calculator here. We just have all our debt lumped into like one thing, 40% DTI, right? And we want to separate these things. So now we're going to look at someone that has an intentional debt strategy. Same 35-year-old, saving or making $150,000 a year, saving 10%. We got it being saved in whole life insurance, that great foundational vehicle. And now we've got our debt into two categories. We got low interest debt. So this might be some student loans and maybe a mortgage. Really long-term debt, fixed interest rates, and they're usually going to be fairly low. So I want to keep that honestly as long as I can. That's a good hedge against inflation. And I got the high debt over here, which would be anything else. This could be the automobile, the credit card, whatever that is. So if we separate those out, now, if I want to look at this and say, you know what, over like 10 years, in the next 5 years, I want to pay off this high interest debt. The most important thing I could do is wipe out those credit cards the next few years. So if we're going to pay off all the automobiles, all the credit cards in 5 years, at age 40 for this individual, you can see what happens here. If we, at age 40 in 5 years, notice this orange bar down here. This was debt payments leaving. As soon as that's wiped out, and now we convert this 24% that's gone now, the 10% goes to 34% savings rate, right? So we're just, instead of paying off the debt and then just spending more money on other stuff, you have to fight that human behavior. This is why our Tough Money Workbook is so important. The behavior around your money will dictate all the cool stuff you get to do later. So you got to fight that urge to pay off debt and then just go spend it somewhere else. So in this case, what we're doing is we're paying off the high interest debt and we're converting it to savings, ideally in an environment that's going to maximize the benefits you deserve. So now our savings rate jumps up to 34%. Watch how fast now this will start to compound your wealth and put you in a position to really be investing in the future. So if we take this out now 35 years, look at the difference between these two examples. We paid off some high interest debt in 5 years, and now we converted that over to savings. And so we are already making these payments. Now we're just controlling that flow of money permanently in an environment we control. And we go from keeping 1.1 million to 3.1 million. This was a multi-million-dollar wealth decision for this individual. And all of these years now, you see all this green staying on your side. all of that green can be used to accelerate and build wealth in the future. And so this is why it's so important to have an intentional debt strategy. It's probably not the most advantageous decision to pay down a mortgage at 2-3%. I would be leveraging any low fixed interest debt, especially long term like that, because you're going to have better opportunities to go out and invest, even save in environments that might beat the rate of return with some of the interest rates people have on mortgages. So let's go back to the PowerPoint now and just do a quick review. So money's flowing into your life through your income statement. This individual makes $150,000 a year. He's spending $90,000 a year, which is 60%. Maybe he's donating 10. That's another 15,000. Saving 30% of his income now. This is a tough saver. If you have a $600,000 net worth and you want to go to a $3 million target net worth, you got $100,000 in liquidity or cash reserves. Ideally, that's stored in a life insurance contract like whole life because of those benefits you get. And then you have $500,000 worth of investment vehicles that are hopefully producing, a couple $1,000s a month of income so you can go out and fund your ideal life. Now, a lot of people, they already know if I'm going to use my cash, the amount of money I'm saving now. So when you get intentional with your debt strategy, you can save more money, which allows you to go and invest sooner. And hopefully you're investing into assets that produce income, that flow right down into your path of money, allowing you to increase your savings, your spending, your lifestyle. All of those things can increase, including the donations. But what we also just talked about is what if we started using some of the cash to maybe pay down some of that high interest rate debt, which could have a greater effect on your savings initially than any type of investment you could be making. And this is where when you are going to decide, like, am I going to pay down debt or am I going to go invest? You got to go know the numbers. And then once that consumer debt is paid off, then I think we're in a position now to go leverage the uncommon debt that will produce income. Now, let me be very clear here too. This doesn't mean just start putting debt on anything. When you want to start using debt as a wealth tool to build wealth and income, there's a few questions you're going to want to ask. Number one, when are you going to use debt? And my answer to this is I'm only going to leverage debt and use other people's money when I have a very profitable opportunity with a high certainty. And this is literally what it means to be an investor. An investor is someone who takes a calculated risk in something they know and understand that has a high chance of paying them back with more money. If you can't say that, you can't describe that description for you as an investor, let's call it what it is. You're probably speculating. So that's the first question. When am I going to use debt? Only when I have a high chance to produce income with an opportunity. Next question I'd ask is how much debt are you going to use? Everyone is so different with this. So you need to make sure that this is going to be consistent with your liquidity reserves. If you get over leveraged with debt and events happen and things shift, you could find yourself in a position where you might lose what took you 10 years to build. And there's just no investment that I think is worth losing 10 years worth of growth and compounding. Last question is, what environment will you source the debt from? Now, this is where I would love to use my life insurance policies. That loan provision on a whole life insurance contract is the most controlled, flexible, certain environment you can source debt from. Now, there are going to be other times when banks may have lower interest rates and really good terms, and so you might want to use a commercial line of credit with a commercial bank. There's going to be a lot of times I'm always going to go to my life insurance contracts. The purpose with this conversation, though, is to give you a framework around what's going to work well for you, what opportunities are you sitting in, and do you have a criteria to make large purchases, pay down debt, and use debt as a wealth building tool in the future. So make sure to reach out to me, book a Path of Money analysis call. I'll walk you through this exact framework for you. Make sure you understand how money is moving through your life so you can make the best decisions for your wealth plan. And as always, choose truth over trends, education over products, and people over profit.